What's up, guys? Ruben Tech back here today with you, and we have found out that Google has just released its new state-of-the-art quantum chip called Willow. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make a video yesterday, so you've had your mind polluted by all these other people who never follow Google, and they just come on the bandwagon when something big happens. And normally, half the time, they're talking Tesla and Palantir and all this other sexy stuff. And I'm the only guy ever talking about Google and the cash machine that they have and the terrific products they make, and all they do is print money, right? So I got beat to the punch. It's because I'm a little sick. Hopefully, I'm presentable to you, trying to get the energy together. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about this because, as you know, on this channel, if you follow my channel, I haven't went into a deep dive. I've been wanting to do a deep dive on this, but I've mentioned multiple times that there are three things coming up that to me are literally going to change humanity. Okay, they're going to be as big as the fire and the wheel, and that is true AGI, fusion, and quantum computing. And so when I talk about quantum computing, that's probably going to be the biggest one if it lives up to its potential. Okay, and that is not hyperbole. Understand that the world that you live in is quantum mechanical. As far as we know, our best science, we live in a quantum world. The fabric of reality, as David Deutsch wrote, is quantum mechanical, as far as we know. Now, that's opposed to a classical system governed by Einstein's general theory of relativity, special theory of relativity, and of course, Newtonian mechanics, things like that. Those are classical systems. Of course, quantum mechanics is not complete yet. It doesn't have a theory of gravity. Kurt Jamingle, I think his name is, he does an excellent show where he talks about theories of gravity, and all these people are coming in and they're trying to come up with quantum theories of gravity, all these scientists and stuff. But right now, the standard model of particle physics has been fully integrated with quantum mechanics, right? Or sorry, quantum field theory. And so all that's left is to find a quantum theory of gravity that's compatible with the math and with what we know from general relativity, and we'll have a theory of everything. Now, will that ever happen? Who knows? Okay, but if things go as we think they could go right now, as our best physics say, then quantum computing could literally alter the fabric of reality. Okay, I'm going to keep saying that. Love David Deutsch. David Deutsch is the founder. Sorry, not the founder, the first person to ever formulate the universal quantum Turing machine. Okay. So, David, if you watch this, I did read your book 20 years ago when I was younger, and I was taking some quantum physics courses, and I hope you don't mind me using that term. I doubt he'll ever watch this, though. Okay, so let's go ahead and find out a little bit about this chip first, and then we will talk about some of the things I just mentioned. Okay, it's not hyperbole. It's absolutely amazing. So Hartmut Nevin, founder and leader, Google Quantum AI. Today, I'm delighted to announce Willow, our latest quantum chip. I'm not going to read everything. I'll just kind of go through the highlights. Willow has state-of-the-art performance across a number of metrics, enabling two major achievements. First is that Willow can reduce errors exponentially as we scale up using more qubits. Now, this is absolutely insanity. Typically, when you use a physical qubit, they're extremely delicate because this is something that has to be isolated essentially from everything. Okay. When I say that, I'm not exaggerating, because once anything affects a qubit, it takes it out of its quantum mechanical state. Okay. Out of its quantum state. And the reason for that is that a traditional bit, traditional bit is 0 or 1. It's a logical gate. It's on or off. It's just a switch. They pump electricity into it. Analog computers are kind of like quantum computing, in a sense that they have multiple states. Okay, but they're different. So analog computer, it's the ability is that they're also susceptible to noise too. Just so you know, analog computers are very susceptible to noise, but they're at like 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.333, etc. Just think of the real number line, right? But a quantum computer is 0, 1, 0 and 1. And that 0 and 1, this is going to sound odd. And now, if you don't know anything about quantum mechanics, that's called superposition. Okay? And I'm going to say that it's in both states at once, but that's actually not an accurate term. It's a separate state that is a combination of the two states. But the separateness of it is what's important. And just so you know, it doesn't have to be like 50-50, right? It does not have to be like that. It doesn't be like, you might think, oh, it's 50% state one. So you say, oh, I get it. There's 3 states, and there's state 1 on, state 2 off, and then state 1 and 2 together, and it's 50% 1, 50% state 2. These are not intuitive things to think about. They're purely set up in mathematical equations. That's not important. That's a little bit too deep for this. But basically what we want to know is that it's in this superposition where it seems to be occupying many states at once. We'll just say that. Okay? But understand that when I say that when it does that, that's actually a separate state in and of itself, if that makes sense. Okay. So when it does that, that's what makes it special. And that is the quantum portion of it. However, a classical system, again, only 2 states, right? On and off. And so it just happens in quantum mechanics, you have something called, there's this thing called a wave function, okay? And when we write out the wave function, it determines, these other states. So when I said like, you have 50% this state, 50%, or you have 75-25. That could just be a formulation, right? And in quantum computing, there's something that's called, in quantum mechanics, there's something that's called the collapsing of the wave function. And when that happens, you end up with one state or the other, A or B. You leave that superposition of state. And so if anything that interacts with it is going to cause it to do that. And in fact, this is the biggest source of quantum woo on the internet. So I'm sure you I don't know. Anyways, because we don't know that that's what it says. We don't know that isn't what it says. All we know is what the mathematics says, and it just appears that if there's any interaction, anything that interferes with it, as far as we know, anything that interferes with it collapses a wave function. That's what we know. Okay. That's where I'm going to leave this. Okay. That was probably way offshoot, huh? Second, Willow performed a standard benchmark computation under 5 minutes that would take one of today's fastest supercomputers 10 septillion, that is a 10 with 25 years, a number that vastly exceeds the age of the universe. That is a huge number, 10 to 25, right? A tremendous number, bigly, right? This is called quantum supremacy. Now, Google actually achieved quantum supremacy on Sycamore. That was their previous chip. I think it was in 2019. But that was like the fastest supercomputer would take like 10,000 years, maybe. I think it was. Let's say 100,000 years. This is 10 to the 25. This is absolute insanity. Okay? Just absolute insanity. The Willow chip is a major step on a journey that began over 10 years ago when I founded Google Quantum AI in 2012. The vision is to build a useful, large-scale quantum computer that could harness quantum mechanics, the operating system of nature. We talked about that. It's the fabric of reality. Thank you, David Deutsch. To benefit society by advancing scientific discovery, developing helpful application, tackling some of society's greatest challenges. As part of Google research, our team has started a long-term roadmap. Yes, they have. I talked about that, didn't I? Maybe I didn't. They started that in 2020. Maybe it's 2019, and they've mapped out 2030, and people are like, oh, hey, they had this huge breakthrough. Well, really, they didn't. They're right on target. They're right on their chart, which is absolutely amazing because, I mean, just go ask somebody when FSD is coming out, and you'll see how hard it is to stick to a timeline. As part of Google research, our team has charted a long-term roadmap, and Willow moves us significantly along that path towards commercially relevant applications. We need that in there, right? For guys like us, we want to know how we're going to make money off this. Though I'm going to tell you, this is beyond money. What I'm saying is not hyperbole, okay? But if it achieves this potential, and I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to be for a long time. But this is way beyond anything you'll ever imagine. Exponential quantum error correction below threshold. Errors are one of the greatest challenges in quantum computing, since qubits, the units of computation, and quantum computers have a tendency to rapidly exchange information with their environment. Of course they do. Anything that interacts with them is going to exchange information with them, making it difficult to protect the information needed to complete a computation. That's right, because the information that's needed is these algorithms like Shor's and Grover. The reason that they outperform classical computation is because they act in parallelism, and that takes advantage of superposition. Okay, so you have to remain in superposition to benefit from it. Typically, more qubits used, the more errors will occur, and the system becomes classical. Okay, we already discussed that. Today in Nature, we published results showing the more qubits we use in Willow, the more we reduce errors, and the more quantum the system becomes. Absolutely amazing. Now that's crazy. We tested ever larger arrays of physical qubits, scaling up from a grid of 3 times 3 encoded qubits to a grid of 5 times 5 to a grid of 7 times 7. And each time, using our latest advances in quantum error correction, we were able to cut the error rate in half. Now that is phenomenal. In other words, we achieved an exponential reduction in the error rate. The historic accomplishment is known in the field as below threshold, being able to drive errors down while scaling up the number of qubits. You must demonstrate being below threshold to show real progress on error correction, and this has been an outstanding challenge since quantum error correction was introduced by Peter Shor in 1995. Now, Peter Shor, I just mentioned that name, Shor's algorithm, the key to cracking all encryption and just someone else stealing your private keys and the Bitcoin BTC blockchain and spending all your coins. Peter Shor, you'll have him to thank for that. And if anyone tells you, no, Bitcoin can't be hacked, it's not in BQP, they'll throw out a term like that, and they probably won't know it. They'll probably have read it on the internet. BQP is bounded probability quantum polynomial time, and basically is saying that with certain levels of error, how fast can quantum systems solve a problem. And with the error rates that they were on before, right, even Shor's algorithm likely would not have succeeded. Actually, it wouldn't have succeeded because I don't want to say classical because you'll get confused, but like right here, China unveiled a 504 qubit supercomputing quantum computer, but really this is not amazing at all. This just was announced a day ago, but it's not amazing at all. This is like IBM supercomputers they're releasing. I think IBM has a 300 or 400 qubit one, and that was from like maybe a year or two ago, but they stopped trying to scale it up because they had so much error, and it's like it became just useless, right? And so they're saying Tianyan 504 surpasses the 500 qubit threshold and also promises to match the performance of international quantum computing platforms like IBM in terms of qubit lifetime, readout fidelity, and other key aspects. But that's not a big deal because those have now just been blown out of the water. But these are systems where if they would have continued on the path, they never would have been useful. Simply put, they never would have been. Willow isn't useful yet, but it's on the path to being useful. You must demonstrate, oh yeah, we covered that. There are other scientific firsts involved in this result as well. For example, it's also one of the first compelling examples of real-time error correction on a superconducting quantum system, crucial for any useful computation because if you can't correct errors fast enough, they ruin your computation before it's done. So this is very important. So quantum computers are not as fast as classical computers. In fact, they're not even as close to being as fast. But the reason that they're so advantageous is that let's say, like, and because they have errors, sometimes you still have to run it a few times, right? Multiple times. But because the speed up is so significant, 5 million to 10 to 25, right? I mean, it doesn't matter, right? It absolutely doesn't matter. But the problem is to correct these errors where it's relevant. The way they're doing this is they're using AI to correct these errors. And they have to pass all this information off super fast. And so that's what they're talking about here, right? of the superconducting quantum system, crucial for any useful computation because you can't correct errors fast enough, right? So they're correcting these errors essentially in real time as they pop up, right? And so that is also what I was going to tell about. This was alpha qubit. This is something I was thinking about doing an article on, or doing a thing on. I wanted to, but I was like, people don't care about this stuff. But now with this, they do. This was from November 2024, okay? Alpha qubit. And this is from DeepMind, Google's internal AI team. It's beyond break-even demonstration where arrays of qubits have a longer lifetime than individual physical qubits do, an unfakeable sign that error correction is improving the system overall. Okay, so this has a lot in it. I wish they would have talked about this a little bit more. Their qubits, they're talking about up here, they didn't explain that these are logical qubits. Okay, I think they might mention that later on somewhere, but they should explain it right off the bat. So a physical qubit system like this, where it has 504 physical qubits, the physical qubits are literally physical. Okay, a logical qubit is composed of several or more physical qubits to create one logical qubit. And so that's where they're able to employ alpha qubit, okay, and we'll read about this in a second, to help reduce the errors. Okay, so that's the breakthrough that they have made. Okay, and by doing this, they're able to have longer lifetimes. So they're able to keep it in these positions that they need to for a longer span of time to get the information that they want. As the first system below threshold, it's the most convincing prototype for a scalable logical qubit built today. It's a very strong sign that, there's logical qubit. But they don't explain it, see? That's a strong sign that useful, very large quantum computers can indeed be built. Willow brings us closer to running practical, commercially relevant algorithm. Got to have that commercial in there. That can't be replicated on conventional computers. 10 septillion years on one of today's fastest supercomputers. As a measure of Willow's performance, we use the random circuit sampling benchmark. Okay, now, so understand this is just a benchmark. This is just like Geekbench. This has no relevant use to make you money or anything like that, okay? But it just shows you what could happen, okay? Pioneered by our team and now widely used as standard in the field, RCS is classical hardest benchmark that can be done on a quantum computer today. You can think of it as an entry point for quantum computing. It checks whether a quantum computer is doing something that couldn't be done on a classical computer. Any team building a quantum computer should check first if it can beat classical computers and RCS. Otherwise, there is strong reason for skepticism that can tackle more complex quantum tasks. We consistently use this benchmark to assess progress from one generation of chip to the next. We reported Sycamore results in October 2019. That's the first time that they reported they had quantum supremacy, and again recently in October 2024. Willow's performance on this benchmark is astounding. It performed a computation in under 5 minutes that would take one of today's fastest supercomputers 10 to 25 or 10 septillion years. If you wanted to write it out, it's 10,000,000. I'm not going to read all that. That mind-boggling number exceeds known timescales in physics and vastly exceeds the age of the universe. Even if you made the universe, I believe this exceeds the age of the universe, even if you took the universe down to a millisecond, right? So the age of the universe is like, what, 5 billion? So that would be here. So, just scale it by 10. So a year, so months, right? Let's just say days. This is stupid. I'll just say anything with the name. Minutes or hours. Minutes. I'm making real rough here. Seconds. And then milliseconds over. Yeah, so it'd be way beyond that. Yeah. This mind about. I should have read this article first. I didn't read this article. Oh, look, they talk about David Deutsch too. Lends credits to the notion that quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes. Oh my gosh, they're going to talk. I should have read this first because I just saw this. This is what I wanted to talk about. It lends credence to the notion that quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes, in line with the idea that we live in a multiverse, a prediction first made by David Deutsch. Oh my gosh. That's absolutely amazing. I don't think that was first made by Deutsch, though. There's I think Frank Tipler talked about the multiverse before Deutsch, and of course Hugh Everett, the many worlds of Hugh Everett. Why would they say that? first made. Do they mean literally first made? I don't think he predicted the multiverse. Oh, no. Okay, I get what they're saying. They're talking about quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes. Yes, that's correct. Deutsch. That was Deutsch's argument. He would say, sorry. I read that wrong. Deutsch would often point out, he would say, if I remember correctly, he would say, the people who don't believe in a multiverse, he would say, how do you account for Shor's algorithm? And so the idea here is that, how do I want to say this? If you think of every particle in the universe as having computational ability, right? Classical computational ability. And then you say, every particle in the universe is part of a supercomputer. And you would calculate how many calculations it could make. I mean, there's people who do this type of stuff. And then you say, I can solve something larger than that problem. Then the question becomes, how is that possible? Right? Because if you're solving something that's larger than all of the possible particles in the universe, then what are you using to do that? And so in this case, now that's just like hypothetical, but in this case, they know they're not using the entire universe as a computer. They're just using this system. And so it's like, where are these extra particles coming from? Now, there are people who argue against this. I've heard good arguments against this, but not against, against this right here. Because this would not exceed the computational ability of the universe, not at all, in the classical system. But they can't argue with Deutsch if it would exceed the computational power of the universe. But that's another matter. Okay. These latest results for Willow as shown in the plot. Scott Aronson, that's his name. Let me see if I can bring that up real quick. Scott Aronson Shores. I should have brought this up too. We're having fun here today, right? Okay, right here. Scott Aronson talks about this. He's a quantum... Is he a quantum physicist, or is he... I think he is. Or he might be a information guy. I've been talking... don't work. Let's see. I probably should look this up first. Multi. Oh, so okay. So he's just literally talking about how Shor algorithm works here. Okay. Sorry. He does have something where he talks about Shor's algorithm and Deutsch's. I don't think that Aronson is against quantum computing. Yeah, I don't think he's against the multiverse. I just don't think he feels that it's necessary either. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong in that. So don't take my word for that. I could be wrong on that. But I remember him one time, or maybe just in that case, he was saying something about that. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. It really doesn't matter to us. I should have read this first before I got to you guys. These latest results for Willow as shown in the plot below are best so far, but will continue to make progress. Google Sycamore, Willow, superconducting, ZZZ, other ions, quantum. Oh yeah, so here's Willow. Oh yeah, so see, look. Years in exascale supercomputer. Absolutely amazing. Okay. Computational costs are heavily influenced by available memory. Our estimates therefore consider a range of scenarios from an ideal situation with unlimited memory to a more practically embarrassing parallelizable implementation of GPUs. Yeah, okay, that sounds fine. Our assessment of how Willow outpaces one of the world's most powerful classical supercomputers, Frontier, was based on conservative assumptions. For example, we assumed full accessory to secondary storage, i.e. hard drives, without any bandwidth overhead. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So that's just saying that basically it's instant access to memory. A generous and unrealistic allowance for frontier, of course, has happened after we announced it. So when they're talking about this, they're just talking about their computations. They're just saying they're doing math. It's not like they actually hooked it up and they did this. They're just saying, hey, when we did the math, as happened after we announced the first beyond classical computation in 2019, we expect classical computers keep improving on this benchmark, but the rapidly growing gap shows that quantum processors are peeling away at a double exponential rate and will continue to vastly outperform classical computers as they scale up. Well, okay, so here's the thing. If they're already on this scale, it's done. So it doesn't matter how fast. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can increase classical computing by 1 million. It won't matter. State-of-the-art performance. Willow was fabricating our new state-of-the-art fabrication facility in Santa Barbara, one of only a few facilities in the world built from the ground up for its purpose. System engineering is key when designing and fabricating quantum chips. All components on a chip, such as single and 2 qubit gates, qubit reset, and readout, have to be simultaneously well engineered and integrated. If any component lags or if two components don't function well together, it drags down system performance. Therefore, maximizing system performance informs all aspects of our process, from chip architecture and fabrication to gate development and calibration. The achievements we report assess quantum computing systems holistically, not just one factor at a time. Very interesting. We're focusing on quality, not just quantity, because just producing a larger number of qubits doesn't help if they're not high enough quality. With 105 qubits, Willow now has best-in-class performance across a two-system benchmark. Now, yeah, so again, this is what's important. So everybody was on a race to get the most qubits, okay? And that's what China's like, oh, hey, we got the most qubits. But the Americans, I shouldn't say it like that. But it's true. It's these American companies realize that's not all American. Maybe, is it just American companies? What European companies are doing this? I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter. I don't want to make it America versus China. But anyway, so like Google and IBM realize, hey, because the errors are increasing so fast, BQP doesn't even matter because our error rate's so high. We can't solve anything. So we have to focus on errors. Okay, we have to focus on errors. And that brings our BQP complexity to something that actually is useful. So, so they're like, okay, we got to go back to the drawing board. It's not about the number of qubits anymore. It's about our error rate with these qubits. And so now you're seeing how with even less qubits, so they can perform amazing things. Best-in-class performance across the two-system benchmark is discussed above. Quantum error correction and random circuit sampling. Such algorithm benchmarks are the best way to measure overall chip performance. Other more specific performance metrics are also important. For example, our T1 times, which measure how long qubits can retain an excitation. The key quantum computational resource are now approaching 100 microseconds. Okay, so that's basically remaining in a superposition. So you might think that doesn't seem very long, but you're talking about keeping something isolated completely from the environment. It's mind-boggling. This is an impressive 5x improvement over a previous generation of chips. If you want to evaluate quantum hardware and compare across platforms, here's a table of key specifications. I don't think there's too much here that helps us out for what we're talking about. This is just looking at error rate and stuff. Error correction cycles per second. Now this is important, 909,000. Okay, we're going to talk about what exactly this means and why this is important when we go over to alpha qubit, random circuit sampling. And so just kind of going through this. Okay. What's next with Willow and beyond? The next challenge for the field is to demonstrate first useful beyond classical computation on today's quantum chips as relevant to real-world application. We're optimistic. I think the first thing they're going to do is try to break encryption, because that is, of course, what the government wants. I mean, if our government could get that, they're going to be reading the Chinese email, they're going to be Russian and getting all their docs. We're optimistic that Willow generation of chips can help us achieve this goal. So far, there have been two separate types of experiments. On one hand, we've run the RCS benchmark, which measures performance against classical computers but has no known real-world applications. Like I said, it's like Geekbench. On the other hand, we've done scientifically interesting simulations on quantum systems, which have led to new scientific discoveries but are still within the reach of classical computers. So what they mean here is that they have done some stuff, some actual real work with them, but that they aren't showing quantum supremacy. These are achievable on supercomputers right now. Our goal is to do both at the same time, to step into the realm of algorithms that are far beyond the reach of classical computers like Shor's algorithm, Grover's algorithm, and that are useful for real-world commercially relevant problems. So classically expensive, and so they're kind of going over some things here, talking about some key areas. And so I do want to know, and I do think some AI powerhouses and have been talking about this, how AI is going to really help in some of these things. So like with quantum chemistry, for example, right? It was like with protein folding, right? So DeepMind, it used to think that in chemistry, quantum chemistry, you really needed quantum computers for protein folding, because it's like, oh, this is so complicated, right? And so it's like, yeah, we got to have these systems. But what happened was that DeepMind came along and it wrote an AI, and I forgot what it was called. AlphaFold. And what AlphaFold did is it reduced the space available for protein folding. So what do I mean by that? The space. Well, in fact, let me just see. P space. No, it's not. Yeah, it is P space. Isn't it P space? Is that what I mean? P space. P space probability space. Is that the term? I don't know. But basically, just think of it like this. Just think like if you could fold this this protein in a billion different ways, theoretically on paper, but then AlphaFold comes in and says, well, technically, I can reduce that billion to 500 million because I'm going to just make up something really stupid. And this is not true. These proteins only fold up instead of down, right? It figures that out by going through and just learning. And so it reduces the space from a billion to the probability space from a billion to half a billion. And then it goes through and says, you know what? It can only fold left or right. So now, it reduces it from 1 billion to half a billion to 250 billion, or 1 billion to half a billion to 250 million. And then, so by doing that, all of a sudden you took these things and it kept optimizing the way to fold it. And now AlphaFold has just done absolutely amazing things. And so it's reduced the space available to a lot of issues. It takes the probability space for a lot of these problems that quantum computers were thought to be needed to solve, and it's greatly reduced it so that AI can go in there and it can optimize it, and then classical computers can handle it. But that's not going to work with cracking encryption, okay? So I mentioned in my last video on Bitcoin that 2 to the 256 is the size of the number for your private keys. That's a lot of possibilities, right? And this isn't protein folding. There's no reason that you can't use any one of those numbers, okay? So there's no way that a AI can come through and rule out any of those. Now, actually, that's not true. Sorry. That isn't true either, what I just said right there. You can rule out some numbers. But that number's so large, okay? That number, I believe, is larger than the number of atoms in the universe. That even if you were to remove a lot of those numbers, it still wouldn't help you that much, is what I believe the case is. So that for sure, AI will never be able to really help with that, reduce that space enough for classical computers to approach. Okay, that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to bring that up. We invite researchers, engineers, and developers to join us at the journey by checking out our open source software and educational resources in a new course in Coursera. Oh, I should take that. Where developers can learn essentials quantum error correction and help us create algorithms that can solve the problems of the future. Our quantum computing roadmap. Milestone 1, beyond classical. Milestone 2, quantum error correction. Milestone 3, this is where they're at. And so I believe they're at, this was supposed to be for 2030 right here. Milestone 3, building a long-lived logical qubit. So they've done this. And so that's what I'm saying, like, where people are like, oh, hey, this is, it's like they wrote this up a while ago. Milestone 4, create a logical gate. Milestone 5, engineering scale up. Milestone 6, large error corrected quantum computer. That would be amazing. My colleagues sometimes ask me why I left the burgeoning field of AI to focus on quantum computing. My answer is that both will prove to be the most transformational technologies of our time. Oh, very nice. Didn't I say that? Well, I put fusion in there too. And the truth is that quantum computing, I don't know why these guys undersell quantum computing, but advanced AI will significantly benefit from access to quantum computing. Actually, yeah, 100%. So I'm saying this, right? And I'm saying like there's either or. It's like, no. Like Roger Penrose thinks that, I believe he thinks we have microtubules in our brain and that our consciousness is created from these microtubules somehow collapsing a wave function. And so that consciousness as a result is quantum mechanical. Now, if that's the case, it means that AGI, not that we'll never, but that obviously quantum computers will be able to significantly reach AGI faster than that. For all purposes, it could be that AGI is out of the reach. True AGI, like our brains do, is out of the reach of classical computers, if Penrose is correct and consciousness is quantum mechanical. Now, Frank Tipler doesn't believe that. Frank Tipler believes that consciousness is just like computation. And I suppose Penrose does too, but Tipler would say that it's related to the number of particles in our brain, and it's not quantum mechanical, which would reduce the space quite a bit and allow for classical computers to simulate it. They would have to be much larger than what they are today, though. Yeah. Anyways, going on. I have fundamental. This is why I named our quantum AI. Named our lab quantum AI. Quantum algorithms have fundamental scaling laws on their side, as we're seeing with RCS. There are similar scaling advantages for many foundational computational tasks that are essential for AI. So quantum computation will be indispensable for collecting training data that's inaccessible to classical machines, training and optimizing certain learning architectures, modeling systems where quantum effects are important. This includes helping us discover new medicines, designing more efficient batteries for electric cars, accelerating progress in fusion. Infinite energy. It's not infinite, but you know what I'm saying. And new energy alternatives. And many of these future game-changing applications won't be feasible on classical computers. They're waiting to be unlocked with quantum computing. Boy, this is going to be my longest episode. So, what's this? Hands-on error correction. Enroll for free. Financial aid available for a free class? That doesn't make sense. That looks interesting. Okay. Ooh, what companies care about this? L'Oreal? What? Doesn't make any sense. Alpha Qubit tackles one of quantum computing's biggest challenges. So we introduced Alpha Qubit, an AI-based decoder that identifies quantum computing errors with state-of-the-art accuracy. This collaborative work brought together Google's DeepMind machine learning knowledge and Google's quantum AI error correction expertise to accelerate progress on building a reliable quantum computer. So when they wrote this article, they didn't tell us what they had done with Willow. Accurately identify errors is a critical step towards making quantum computers capable of performing long computations at scale, opening the doors to scientific breakthroughs in many new areas of discovery. So you might say, wait, what? I thought they were reducing errors greatly over on Willow. Yes, they are, but they're nowhere near where they need to be. So 0.035% and 0.33%. So what is this? This is 1%, 1 in 1,000, 3 in 10,000. And don't quote me, but I think they need to be at 1 in a trillion. It's where it'll be relevant. So they're still got a long way to go. Technology utilizing qubits or quantum bits, which can sift through vast sets of possibilities using quantum inference to find an answer. See, this is where AI is just absolutely amazing. The natural quantum state of a qubit is fragile and can be disrupted by various factors, microscopic defects in hardware, heat, vibration, electromagnetic interference, and even cosmic rays, of course, yeah. So you just have these particles that are constantly traveling through you and traveling through Earth. If it touches a qubit, then it's interfering with it. Consciousness is interfering with it, right? You know, somebody looked at it. Oh, their consciousness touched it. natural quantum state of a qubit is fragile. Oh, we talked about the quantum error correction offers a way forward by using redundancy, grouping multiple qubits into a single logical qubit, and performing regular consistency checks on it. The decoder preserves quantum information by using these consistency checks to identify errors in logical qubits so they can be corrected. So basically, they're just doing things over and over again. But that's fine, because remember of how much faster that works in parallelism. So like if you're going to talk hertz, right, a quantum computer is way magnitudes of order slower than a classical computer. But that's okay, because the problems that they solve are exponentially multiple magnitude, and just so much faster exponentially that it doesn't matter. Again, 5 minutes to 10 to 25 years. You can't compare the two. There's no, you could run it a billion times and you still would be way, just unbelievably faster. So here's how 9 physical qubits, small gray circles, in a qubit grid of side length 3. So this is simulating 3 qubits form a logical qubit. Oh, sorry, this is 1 qubit. Form a logical qubit. At each step, 8 more qubits perform consistency checks, square and semicircle errors, blue and magenta when failing, and gray otherwise. At each time step, which informs a neural network decoder alpha qubit. At the end of experiment, alpha qubit determines what errors occurred. So I did read this. And so this was given a hint towards Willow, but of course we didn't know. Yeah, see, they didn't talk about Willow in here. We began by training our model to decode the data from a set of 49 qubits inside a Sycamore quantum processor, the central computation unit of quantum computers. So anyways, this isn't too important, but basically this is the technique alpha qubit. This is AI decoder, and it's being used over here. And so when they're talking about having superconducting, they're talking about being able to send these errors fast enough through over to that system so that it can decode these errors real time and make these results relevant. Okay. That is the technical aspects of everything. And so I talked about this, right? 504 qubits, doesn't matter. These aren't logical qubits. These are going to have extremely high error rate. They're not going to be in a state of superposition as long as it needs to be useful. Or as I said, excitation, I guess is what you can call it. So I wanted to bring up this guy, Frank Tipler. So David Deutsch and Frank Tipler, very interesting physicists, okay? Deutsch had wrote a few really good books I read when I was younger. And of course, as I mentioned, he was the first one to formulate the universal quantum Turing complete machine. And Frank Tipler came up with John Barrow, and he wrote the anthropic cosmological principle. This is before he went off the deep end and started trying to prove that Jesus walked on water. But in this book, Tipler, so here's where we're going to leave business. We're going to get a little out there, guys, okay? And so when I say this stuff, understand, I'm not saying Frank Tipler's correct, but people just write off his stuff because of his later things. Like, yes, he went off the deep end, and I know the scientific community hates the notion of God, or at least they did. I think nowadays it's more open to that. But even if it's more open to it now, they don't want it in their work. They don't care what you believe at home, but they don't want it in their work. And so I feel like Tipler, he crossed that line. And so I get it. But it doesn't mean you can disregard his work. I mean, he's a man that has something named after him. Tipler's time similar. How many scientists have something named after him? And truthfully, I believe if he didn't become a crackpot, he would have probably got a Nobel Prize. I mean, he just super smart guy. But in his book, so they talk about the anthropic principle, and they have different versions of it. They have the strong anthropic principle, the weak anthropic principle, and then those were formulated, I forgot by who the physicist was. And then they have Barrow and Tipler came out with the cosmological anthropic principle. And so basically the anthropic principle, as the name states, right, it has to do with humans, anthropic. And it's essentially that life, the universe in some way necessitates, it needs life, okay? And the weak anthropic principle is where it's just like its name, it's weakly linked. Life is weakly linked. And the stronger one, you could say, is stronger linked. But in this book, they propose that it's absolutely necessary and it's intrinsically linked to the universe. So without getting too far here, again, I'm not a physicist. Okay, I've taken some classes, but neither here or there. But the issue with quantum physics is that they have no theory of gravity. That's one. Also, there's an issue with quantum information being leaked by black holes. Okay? Because the information that's being leaked by black holes cannot be reversed, and you cannot find a prior state. And the way that quantum mechanics works is that you should always be able to determine a prior state from a current one. You should be able to go forward or backwards. And it appears that Hawking radiation, right, it erases all prior knowledge of what prior states were. And so this breaks one of the key principles. It breaks the unitarity. It's just the unitary operator in quantum mechanics. And so Tipler in this book, I'm trying to, I'm trying to figure out how I can wrap this up quick, but I'm trying to explain a little bit of it. They believe that, the only way to make this consistent is that you have to wipe out event horizons, okay? So that there are no event horizons in the universe. And in order to do that, you can't have an expanding universe. You have to have a collapsing universe. This is where it gets nuts. And so that's where the anthropic principle comes in, because they're like, the universe created life in order to collapse the universe back onto itself. Because right now the universe is expanding and we don't know or see any mechanism that this expansion will reverse. Now, you might hear like Roger Penrose talks about like a big bang, a singularity, a big bang, but he's talking about it in a different way. So when you go to heat death and there's no gradients left to be exploited anywhere in the universe, everything in a sense is of single natures. Everything reverts to a singularity, size, distance, space. These are all meaningless terms. Everything is oneness, okay? The only reason work gets done in physics is because there's some type of gradient to be exploited from one particle to the next. And if all that's done in heat death, then you're zero dimensional. You're not even one dimensional. You're zero dimensional. So you're back at a point, okay? But so that's where Roger's like, okay, so that would be another singularity, and then from there we could have a rebounding universe. Again, in our brains, this is hard to comprehend because it would be like, oh, wouldn't it be huge though? But it's like, no, it's not huge. There's nothing. It's hard to explain. But Tipler and Barrow approach this a different way. They look at it as life will manipulate the universe and collapse it upon itself, so that somehow what's my term? We will reverse the expansion of the universe, to collapse it upon itself. And that when we do, the singularity that is recreated has all the computational, informational processing of the universe at that point. And it can do some pretty amazing things. Okay. So in here, Tipler goes to a book like this, and he basically talks about, in his next book, he calls it the physics of immortality, how as you approach this state, and we have these quantum computers that have, okay, this is going to get weird. You are a quantum mechanical system. And Jacob Bekenstein would say that if you took yourself, if I'm 6 feet tall and I draw a circle in space that's 7 feet in total diameter, and I use his equations, that anything that can fit within that circle, okay, doesn't matter if it's a 3D object. We're just talking about a 2D circle that you put in space, but if you want, you can twirl it and make a sphere. Anything that could fit in that circle, okay, you can calculate the upper bound on the maximum amount of information needed to replicate anything in there. This is what's known as the Bekenstein bound. So the Bekenstein bound, if I take it, for me, I draw this 7 foot tall circle just to get my hair and everything. And in the circle, it gives me this number and this bound saying that if I had this much processing, if I had this much processing power available to me, this many bits of information available to me to process. And so this is based on information theory. So when I'm saying processing, in information theory, you got to remember that it gets really technical. It's like a hydrogen atom in a way is a computer, and it has, you know, so many bits of processing power. But anyway, so just think of it like that. So if we could have this amount of processing power for these amount of bits, right? And then, you know, that you could replicate me. And when you replicate me quantum mechanically, in the theory of quantum identity, when you replicate something on a quantum nature, it is the object. So it is me. And so if you don't believe in a spirit or things beyond this universe, like Frank Tipler, you might say, wait, you said he believes in God. He does, but it's really different. He does not believe in anything outside his universe. His version of God is very different. I don't know why. It's hard to explain. I could explain it if you wanted me to. If you want me to explain, I'll explain down below. Write in comments down below. But he doesn't believe in anything outside of the physical. He believes physics is all there is. And so, how do I want to say this? So, if you could replicate me on a quantum computer, or even a classical computer, of course, a quantum computer would be better to do it on. But, you know, there would be a sufficiently large enough classical computational power in the universe that someday, maybe alien civilization has one right now, who knows? But if you replicate me at a quantum level, right, like everything perfectly, then that is me. Okay, that's what the quantum theory of identity says. Quantum system A, if it has all the exact same properties as quantum system B, then A is B. It's not a duplicate of B. It is B. And I think the show Devs did a take on this, right? A really interesting take on this. And so that's Jacob Bekenstein. He came up with this. He studied black hole thermodynamics. And so, as you know, a black hole is the maximum amount of information. A black hole saturates Jacob Bekenstein, the Bekenstein's bounds. Okay. So a black hole is the maximum amount of information you have. A black hole essentially is like an infinite bag of holding. So I can reach into there. Imagine this. I can reach into a black hole and I can pull out $1 million, physical $1 million. Now the black hole is going to lose a little bit of size, because every time I pull information from it, the information isn't available, but it has enough information for anything that can fit into it. So if I had a bag of holding like this big, anything that could physically fit in there, this mouse, that watch, if it was a black hole, I could pull it out of there. I could pull the information out of there. You could say in the future, I mean, this is crazy, that you could pull anything out of there. Okay, and you might say, how would you do that? I don't know how. I'm just telling you, like, theoretically. Okay, the information is in there. Okay, the maximum amount of information to describe anything that can fit in that space is the Bekenstein bound, and a black hole saturates that bound, which means that any physical configuration, any and every physical configuration is available in there. Okay, so every version in that 7 foot, in the 7 foot Bekenstein bound that that we would make, not only would every version of me be available in there, every version of you and every human being under 7 feet tall, every animal, every item, everything is available in there. Now, when I say everything, I don't mean all of it at once. Okay? As we pull things out of it, the information comes out, and it's going to get a little bit smaller. And that's where we have Hawking radiation. Black holes, as we know, evaporate. It takes a long, long, long time. But everything's in there, could be in there. And the information that we have, I think it's like 10 to the 40th. There's a lot of items that you could pull out of there. So like, I don't take as much information even close to the bound, right? Like in that bound, just for me, right? It could contain every single version of me. Okay. And I think, what am I changing? It's like every single particle of me, every time it interacts with another particle. I think that's like, Tipler had actually calculated this. It's like 10 to the 40 state changes per second or something insane, or something like that. The number of particle interactions. Maybe that's a little high. That seems a little high. I can't even imagine. But anyways, it's some huge number. So every version of me, every second, right? And the second I'm talking to you, how many particles have interacted in me and changed? Every single one of those versions of me, you could pull out of the black hole of holding, 7 feet tall, and replicate me. It's very interesting stuff. Okay, so quantum computing could bring back the dead, and Frank Tipler's estimate. And this is a very touchy topic. Probably one I shouldn't hit on, and probably no one is at this point, so I think it's okay to talk about this. And I've asked a few professors about this, and a few people who are quantum physicists about this, and nobody will say no. It's not like something they want to talk about, but nobody will say no, it's not possible. But they're just like, nobody will say this is pure science fiction. They'll just say, well, that's just really theoretical. But this, like, the laws of nature allow for it. Okay, so you're assuming, here's what has to be assumed. You're assuming that this face you're looking at right here. Am I in there? Let's get me in there. So we're assuming that this face that you're looking at right now is a quantum system. And we're assuming that nature is quantum mechanical. Now you might say, wait, you said that you have to have unitarity is violated. Well, again, Barrow and Tipler solved that by collapsing the universe through their anthropic cosmological principle. But then you'll say, hey, wait, what about quantum gravity? So they also believe they solved quantum gravity with, not they solved it, but actually Feynman, DeWitt, Bryce DeWitt, and Steven Weinberg all solved it, came to the same conclusion separately, but they abandoned it because the differential equation it has is not renormalizable, which means basically that it's infinite. And so you can never solve it. But you technically can solve it. You would just need an infinite amount of time. And so Tipler and Barrow didn't see that as a problem. They were like, well, we're going to have infinite processing power at the omega point, which is the singularity. And there will be no such thing as time, essentially. And so we can go ahead and do infinite equations, and we'll have the theory of everything at that point of maximum informational processing. But anyways, that doesn't matter. If quantum mechanics is what describes as reality, and we have large quantum computers, like let's say that I have enough, I can simulate, and actually a better term would be emulate, because I believe emulate is a little more precise than simulate. I can emulate a 7-foot black hole, right? So my hard drive is a 7-foot black hole, and I have the processing power necessary for all state changes. I could bring back my grandma. I don't really know what that means. She wouldn't be here. She would be in the computer. Okay. But it's a quantum computer, and her state would be in there, and it's not like on a screen. It would be replicated in the bits. And that's where quantum computing is so powerful, is that, let's say you wanted to make a system of weather. In some sense, you're not simulating weather, you're actually creating weather. Right? So in a classical computer, you're simulating things. But in quantum computers, when these bits line up in the proper way, if you had enough of them, in some sense, they are the object. I don't really know if that makes sense. So again, I would just say this is really far out there. And then in the article, they talked about many worlds, the idea that we live in many worlds. So when you look at quantum computing and you have these different worlds, right? Different universes. And actually, they're not separate universes. It's kind of a bad way to put it. Because people think of like universe A,